everyone, and welcome to Beginnings, the show that asks, where do creative people come from? My name is Andy. I'm the host of the show and a writer and performer based in Los Angeles, California. Mabel smelled a skunk and is freaking out and barking everywhere, but hopefully she calms down and you don't hear a lot of barking in the background of this intro. Very good episode today. This is the band ALMA, aka musicians Alba Torremocha, Melissa Carter, and Lily McDonough. I asked Alba how to pronounce her first name in the beginning of this, but I did not ask about her last name, so apologies if I butchered that. But if you don't know who ALMA is, I'm going to read you their bio right now. Hailing from all over the world, the New York-based trio officially formed in 2019 out of a shared delight in harmonizing and experimentation. Later that year, they were named an NYFA Fellow for their genre-pushing work, and the following year were awarded an Awesome Foundation grant. Then in 2021, they released their first album, Mosaic, to acclaim. It's wonderful. I highly recommend it. I'm not sure how I discovered ALMA, but it must have been somewhere around the time the album came out, because I have just been listening to it constantly for over a year now, to the point where I try not to have more than one person on the show at a time. There's the logistical thing. It's tough to get a flow going with multiple people over Zoom, as you may have found out over the last 3 years. But really, it's more like the more people there are, the less intimate the show is. Or really, I guess a better way of putting it is that, when you have more people on, it can get kind of superficial sometimes, and you really only get into the surface of some of the topics I like to talk about. But not today. Not today. Alba, Melissa, and Lily were totally down to get into childhood and psychology and all that kind of stuff, and we get into some interesting things about, well, look, if you've listened to the show before, for the last year or so, I have been thinking a lot about what I've been calling the voids that are in us all and how we fill those voids. And I think we get into some new territory on that question in this. Well, breaking new ground on a philosophical issue. So, yeah, I love their album. I was very glad to chop it up with them. I hope you like this episode. And if you do, why not subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts from? Yeah, why not? You can also leave a review if you want. I really spent, the show is almost 13 years old, and I would say for 12 of those years I did not ask people to write reviews, and now I'm like, maybe I should have done that. So hey, if you got 30 seconds and your Apple Podcast app is open, why not shoot me a 5-star review and say, hey, this guy, what a good dude. Before we get into the episode, I got a couple plugs. I want to plug my new Substack. It's free, and I'm basically on there doing some philosophy. Yes, if you don't know, I used to be a philosophy professor, and I miss doing some of that work. So it's not super scholarly. I cite my sources, and it's obviously well thought out, but I'm trying to make it friendly for a general audience. So if you're interested, it's theslowdystopia.substack.com. Also, my band Harm from back in the day, we put out our lost album last year called I Am Suddenly Aware, and you can get that if you are so inclined. If you like Cassiopeia, you like someone fitting 30 hooks within one song, you will like Harm. Go to andybeckerman.bandcamp.com. And of course, I'm at Andy Beckerman on Twitter and Instagram. Coming up, stay tuned. Got some great episodes coming up. We got Damian Abraham. I just talked to him today from Fucked Up. That was a wonderful conversation. Emma Pates, another great conversation. You might know her from Pennyworth. She plays Bruce Wayne's mom, and she is just wonderful on that show. And Terry Winter, the creator of Boardwalk Empire, a Sopranos writer, and has done so much more. So stay tuned for that. But for now, let's talk to Alba, Melissa, and Lily. Because there's so many people on this, do you want to introduce yourselves And so people can tell your voices separately. Why don't we go Lily and then Alba? Alba or Alba?
Alba, either way.
What do you?
It's
no,
been twisted
it's not either way.
years.
What is your preferred way of having your name pronounced?
Sure. In Spanish, it's Alba.
Alba.
Yeah.
And then Melissa. So we'll go in that order.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, I'm Lily.
Okay.
I'm Alba.
And I'm Melissa.
Okay.
Were we supposed to say more about ourselves?
No, none.
Okay.
I was before we started, I was thinking about that, and then I was like, I hate when I'm put on the spot like that, and someone asks me, "Hey, say your name and then give us a fun fact," and I'm like, I don't have like a fun fact or something quick loaded, and so I always find that stuff to be off-putting, and for something that's supposed to be an icebreaker, I mean, not that this was, but like, it was just so people could tell your voices apart. For something that's supposed to be an icebreaker, it essentially, to me, it like gets in the way of like an actual conversation, and it's more like, oh, great. So this is interesting because I rarely have more than one person on the show, and I am curious because this is about people's childhoods, people whose art I like, their childhoods. I'm wondering, do you guys know about each other's childhoods, or is your past before you met wherever at Pratt? I don't know where you met. I just picked some place in New York that people might meet. Before you guys met, do you know anything about each other's histories?
Not really. And this is something that I've noticed, like, after doing, a bunch of interviews with ALMA, that, like, I feel like I know you guys much better just through that, which is awesome. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to just digging into, your childhoods and see what we can find.
Although I do think we learned a lot through actually making Fall, which is one of the songs on our album. Yeah. The whole bridge is basically like a sound compilation of early videos from our childhood. And we were talking about nostalgia and, what are the things that make us feel like we're children again and bring back that feeling. And so we actually went literally back into the archives. We were talking to our moms and dads and asking for our old footage. And I feel like I learned a lot about both of you, even though Alba's were in Spanish, for instance. We're like, okay, there's a monster somewhere in this narrative. And, like you can pick out little pieces and it's very sweet to hear like small Alba.
Small Alba. Yeah. No, I totally agree. It's funny. I thought of Fall too, but it's like we know things about each other's childhoods, and yet like we don't. Like we have spent some time in Massachusetts, where Lily's from, so we've existed in her childhood home quite a bit. We actually do our yearly residency there. We spent a lot of time with her dad, and then like as I'm like talking, I'm like, I think we know the least about my childhood.
Yeah, you're a mystery.
I don't know.
Mystery Melissa.
But like we spent time at Lily's, and then we went to Spain this last year, and we like didn't go to Alba's hometown, but we met her family, we met her dad, met her mom, met like her extended family, like got to at least be in Spain with her. But I'm from Washington, D.C., and we haven't played there yet. And also like it just happens that we like haven't been there and been on my own childhood stomping grounds. So that's, we're due for that.
Yeah, we are.
Okay, so I'll start with Melissa since you're the most mysterious. Why has your past not come up yet? Are you a private person, or
Not
is it
at
just
all.
that it hasn't?
What are you hiding, Melissa?
I'm not. I mean, I do feel like I'm actually like the most kind of well, I don't know. We're all sherry people, but I feel like in terms of like my past and my kind of personal processing, I'm like a very like processory, but just that's a total word that I made up, but I'm like a total processor kind of person. And I feel like I came into the band like with that at the forefront. And so I've definitely shared stuff about my childhood, but it's different to say like, oh, like I'm really close with my mom and like I don't have a relationship with my father as a result of how my childhood went, versus them actually being there and like spending time with my mom and like feeling what that's like tangibly.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
So, okay. So, father, was your dad out of the picture? Like, did they get divorced?
They got divorced. Yeah. We're going right
How old
in.
were you?
I was, woo! I was 7. They got separated when I was 7 and then divorced when I was like 11.
Okay. So that's like pivotal age
Yeah.
for them to get divorced.
Hugely so. Yeah.
It's funny. I never realized we were all children of divorce.
I was just
Oh, I
thinking
did.
that. I was just
Oh, I
thinking that
knew.
as well. Yeah.
I
But
can't
it's
believe I
true.
never
I don't
put that
think about
together.
Oh, that's interesting because I think you guys are younger than me. I always associate like tons of divorces with Gen X, with like the generation like just above me, because like the 70s seemed like a time rife with divorce. But maybe that
Right.
maybe that didn't stop. Maybe it just kept. Maybe it's-
No, our parents are baby boomers.
Oh, are we all the
100%.
same? Are we all around the same age?
I think so.
so.
Oh wow.
You can
I just
guess.
assumed for some reason you guys were like in your like mid 20s or something like that.
No,
We're just very immature.
we're youthful.
So are everyone's divorces around the same? Like, were you all in single digits when that happened?
Yeah.
Yep. 3.
Okay.
I was 7 as well.
Oh my god,
Yeah.
3. That's so young.
That's very young.
Yeah.
It was a
yeah.
good thing.
3, like
we
you're not
regret nothing.
okay. You're not, because you're not really fully formed at 3, but by 7 you've got a personality, and so like a rupture like that is enough to like throw something off. I mean, can you? I don't know if you've like thought about it or but like, were you one way and then the divorce happened, and then you kind of like shifted?
I noticed that with my brother. I don't think so I was 7, my brother was 11. Actually 12. And I did notice that he became a little bit more just kind of to himself. To me I didn't notice, but maybe just because it was from the inside, maybe someone from the outside would have noticed something. I did notice though that the dynamics changed completely. So it was it's the classic story of like, it's easier to get what you want, because there's like a feud. And like, if you ask one person or the other, like, who to navigate. So in that way, I guess I became more schemy or more strategic with like how I would get what I wanted. But I did notice a big shift with my brother. He definitely became a little bit more shy and less sure of himself.
Was it in Spain? I mean, well, first, where did you grow up? And then was there any kind of stigma of divorce in Spain? It seems like in Europe, it's a lot less important, maybe.
Yeah, so I'm from Salamanca. It's a little medieval city between Madrid and Portugal in the west. And I would say, so in general in Europe, it's a little less big of a deal. But in Spain, southern Europe, like Spain, Italy, they're very like family oriented and very kind of like clan oriented cultures. So it was definitely a bigger deal, like just in my family, like kind of like became overprotective of my brother and I in that sense. But yeah, I don't know if culturally it was seen in one way or another. It's just not a normal thing.
Mm-hmm. Are you Catholic?
Culturally, not practical. Like I have never gone to church, but
gotcha.
But my family in general, yes.
Was it for any of you? I guess Lily, you grew up in the household that was already kind of like ruptured. Was there any kind of religious practice going on? And did divorce matter in that religion? That's why I asked about Catholicism. Like when I know about Spain, I'm like, it's a pretty Catholic country.
Yeah.
All right, buckle up for this answer.
Okay.
So yeah, sort of. My parents are both hippies, and I would say, okay, so if we go timeline here, my dad My dad made a brief attempt at going to a UU church, like Unitarian Universalist, because he thought, more structure. He was a man on his own, so he would take me there, and then that stopped because I kept on asking who the king was at the top of the podium. Evidently wasn't getting through. So we abandoned that foray into religion, and then it was later taken up by my dad. Went through various phases with channeling and men's groups, which I guess performed the role of religion. Burning Man.
So he was really searching. He was like
really, really searching. He went through an astrology phase when I was, in my young, I would say like, the late single digits, early double digits. So we would have all these astrologers come in, like all the folks who open up Stonehenge every year would come and stay with us in Boston for the Boston conferences. So
sorry, go back. What do you mean the guys who opened up Stonehenge?
The Druids who open up Stonehenge every year in the white paraphernalia were at our dinner table.
In the like wearing hoods?
Oh yeah. The whole 9 yards. Yeah. And so we would hear stories about like, oh yeah, that time that they slept on top of the pyramids, and the one room was filled with other people who are trying to sleep in the pyramids and get past security guards. So they went to the top of the pyramids and they slept there instead. And boy, does it get cold. Did you know it gets cold? So that was a whole phase of my upbringing. And my mother for a while was a spiritualist. So there was a church in Swampscott, Mass, which, their whole thing is like, oh God, it just sounds so awkward outside. Their whole thing was like being able to channel ghosts, for lack of a better term. Mm-hmm. And be able to talk to relatives who have passed on, and they have like a whole creed and a whole thing. So I would sit in the back with my crayons, through all of this. And my mother was like deep in that world for a while. And, there was a lot of woo woo in my upbringing. But I wouldn't say like formal religion per se. Oh God! Oh, there was the Sufi. Oh, sorry, I forgot about the whole Sufi era. My dad was into Sufism for a while, and we did whirling dervish stuff. That was a whole other Quran era.
Okay, hold on. All right, I have 3 questions.
I think you should do a whole podcast just about Lily.
Yeah.
I want to hear more about this.
It's so much. I'm so sorry.
No. This is great. I wasn't sure what Sufism. That's like which line that goes off of Muhammad's successors. I can't really remember. But
so it's you can think of it as basically like the mystic branch of Islam. So, they're all about like, meditation, life of the mind, life of the spirit, like deep introspection, quietude. There are a lot of like beautiful Sufi poets that, it's very sensual. It's not at all what we think of like, radicalized Islam at all. There's a lot of whirling to deeply meditative music.
Right. And then the spiritualism, is that like the Madame Blavatsky kind of stuff that comes off of like the 1800s?
Less theatrical. Yeah. Less theatrical, less of like seance-y, and more, a whole bunch of folks gathered in a church space, and they, they do kind of typical sermon stuff, like where you talk about, what's good in life and what you can improve in life and how to be a good person and all of that. And then there's this section at the end, which is bewildering, where they stand in a line and the invited guest will like go or no, sorry, that's not the standing in line. That's the Reiki portion. The guest, I know. I'm sorry. This is so much. The guest will like point to someone in the audience and be like, I have a tall man of around 65, feels like a fatherly presence, blah, 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 blah. He wants to tell you that blah, 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 blah. This thing is important to him, blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. And then they move it along.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And then finally, do you know what your parents were searching for?
Oh, man. I have no idea with my mom, to be honest. I really don't know. There are a lot of things that I don't know about my mom that I wish I knew. But I think maybe in time I will come to understand. But I think with my dad, I have a little bit of a better picture. I think I sort of have this feeling after all these years that maybe without that sense of searching, life would be very boring. And my dad is really looking for life to have like this overarching meaning that gives the whole thing a sense of purpose. And without that bigger pattern, I think he feels like it's just too boring to be born. If that makes any sense.
Uh-huh. Did that rub off on you, or did any of that, either from your mom or your dad, did any of that, I guess is what I'm asking. Did you push against that, or did you kind of Homer in the bushes fall into it? Does that make sense? That if you remember the Simpsons episode.
Yes. Oh my God, so good. Yes. And now they made a gif of it and it's great.
Yes. And the meme.
Yeah. I mean, I would say like a little bit of both. I am a little bit more cynical than either of my parents, and a little bit more science-y, let's base it in peer-reviewed facts. And that's a little bit of my my stamp on our family. But I do enjoy this sense that there's something greater out there, that there's a meaning to life, and I do subscribe to that. And while I'm not sure that I necessarily believe any of the things that they went into, at least in specifics, I think the overarching like sense of a larger meaning to life and spiritual practice is something that I ascribe to.
Does that seem? Was that the same for you, Melissa?
Very different in many ways, because I didn't have a parent that was searching in quite the same way, though my mom was raised in a Methodist family, and a lot of my mom's side of the family are ministers. But like, I mean, I was going to say something that would sound diminutive, and I don't mean it that way, but I was going to say, but cool ministers, you know?
There are
ministers are cool.
Yeah, there are. I think we know by now in 2022, there are plenty of uncool, if not worse, ministers.
Exactly. 1,000%. And so like my grandfather wrote a sermon that MLK used, and that's like a big honor of our family. And my uncle's a minister, and he like really followed in my grandpa's lineage. And my mom, like as soon as my parents got divorced, was actually, here's where it overlaps, was like just like Lily's dad, like we have to go to a Unitarian Universalist church. And so she took us there, but we like spent most of my childhood there. She stayed there. She never felt like really connected. But my mom, because she grew up in the church, loved the community aspect. And a lot of our community was there. Like I grew up right outside of DC in Maryland. And so it was like a bunch of progressive families where like the dad was Jewish and the mom was Christian, and they didn't know where to go. And they also like weren't particularly religious, but they wanted a place to take their kids on a Sunday, and they wanted to like have the free coffee and talk to their friends.
Coffee.
And so I started drinking coffee at like 14 because of that church. And then I like developed a major addiction, as they know, which I like just stopped drinking coffee like a year ago. And Lily did not believe it at first. She like checked in on me regularly. She was like, so are you still just having chai?
Like you were getting off of heroin or something?
Yeah. It was deep for me. I would at our residencies, I would just like make a pot of coffee and just have a cup like nonstop all day. I would be like, I need to take a break and get a coffee.
So wait, why'd you
that's
stop?
A side note. It was giving me a lot of anxiety and I didn't even realize. And
There's so many, but everything gives everyone anxiety these days. So why?
I mean, yes, completely. Our world is a very hard place to navigate. And truly, like it added to my physical anxiety in a way that I was not able to recognize until I stopped drinking it. And I have decaf coffee and I still like spend money on, effing $7 decaf cappuccinos with oat milk. And I love that. And it brings me so much joy. And you could say that that's like one of my spiritual practices.
Okay.
To bring it back. It's like one of my, my rituals, but also my mom, I guess to like bring it back to the conversation at hand, my mom and my whole matrilineal line on my mom's side kind of searched for spiritual practices beyond their Methodist life and upbringing. And so my grandmother and my aunt and my mother all read tarot. And when I got my first period, my aunt and my mom read my tarot. And it was amazing and very witchy in the best way. And so my family's kind of witchy. And my dad's side is just like cool. Catholic and like not and like repressed. So like not going to church, but like I was baptized because my dad was Catholic. But then my mom's side has this like witchiness as well.
Okay, good. At least
witchy
you're saved.
already. Yeah. Oh, I'm saved. Yeah, I'm covered in all the ways. It's like I can put a hex on you, but I'm also baptized.
Now, does the witchy stuff resonate with you, or is it just something that your mom, your whole matrilineal line did, and then you're like, yeah, sure, why not?
Oh, it very much resonates. I mean, I don't read other people's tarot, and also like not that can be a practice in so many ways for people. Some people find it to be fun. I think it's like a tool for self-reflection and a way to connect with yourself. And it doesn't have to be anything more than that. But I personally, I mean, it was just like witchy, spooky season. Mm-hmm. And so it's like really on my mind. But yeah, personally, I've been thinking about that a lot in relationship to my creative work. And I'm starting to kind of own my witchiness. Yeah.
Okay, interesting. I say interesting because of people get to a point in life where, well, maybe some people never get there, but like where whatever the thing is that you were when you were a kid, you pushed away from it for a long time. And then at some point you're just like, this is me. And then you accept it. And then you actually live a better life. That's a very rough, I don't know if that feels right for any of you guys. But it just seems to be generally what seems to be with at least 20th, 21st century people that I've talked to on this show. The general shape of the existential journey.
Yeah, I mean, I know Lily, Lily's, how many years older are you than me? 2? A year and a half?
How old are you?
I'm 32.
A year.
I always think that you're more... You're wiser. It must be 2. Yeah, 1 year, right? Because you were 1 year. So I even though it was like a year difference when Lily turned 30, this is why I thought it was a greater age difference, because I was like, oh, I must have been younger in this memory because it felt so far away to be 30. But when you turned 30, which is like funny, but when you turned 30, you were like, oh my God, your 30s are so good. Like you just stopped caring.
Right. I mean,
and I was
Lily's
like, I can't wait for that.
And you're July, so I mean, there is a big, you know.
Yeah, it's
you
a
were
year and a
28 at the
half.
time, and then
Yeah,
that
it's
makes
a year and a half.
sense. Yeah.
But yeah, and so I think it's also like, at least for me, it's that in large part. Like, I feel like now that I'm in my 30s, I really don't care in the best way. Like, I care so much
Interesting.
about my life, but I'm also like, this is who I am.
Interesting. All right. So if Melissa's the witchier end and Lily is the more rational, in quotes, end, Alba, where do you fall on the spectrum
Oh boy.
between the two other people you create music with?
Yeah, I think I've been changing and shifting, and I think I'm a good example of what you were talking about, of like pushing against something and then, you know, kind of falling into it again. I wasn't the like complete cynical, always logical end, always. In fact, this is funny because in Spain, going back to the, you know, kind of Catholic cultural thing, every baby or most babies get baptized, no matter, you know, how religious their family is. And then almost every kid also gets the communion when you're like 11 or 12. But again, it's more of a cultural thing. Like, you maybe don't go to church, but you do this because everybody else does it. And even at that young age, at 10 or 11, I like had this huge fight with my parents because I didn't want to have a communion. And it was like a weird thing. I was a weird kid because you get all these presents when you have the communion and whatever. And I just didn't want to do it. I didn't believe in it. And so I was always very strong-minded toward that. And also very weirdly kind of like independent and detached from like family ties or whatever. It's like I always made my own decisions and wanted to do my own thing. And lately I've been kind of, I think Melissa was spot on, like the witchiness and the spirituality has different meanings for different people. And for me, it's been a way of like maybe getting a little bit rid of that cynicism and digging a little bit deeper into myself and being like, oh, maybe this like independence and this, you know, cynic facade is a, you know, defense mechanism for something else. And so through spirituality and through being a little bit more open to things not being black and white or falling onto a grid, that has allowed me to be a bit more open with how I think about myself or how I think about how I experience the world, and be a little bit more, you know, flexible with the judgments I make about myself and other people. So that, I think, has been my journey for the last 5 years or so. And I don't know if this is just coincidence, but it has been very related to being in the band as well and having the influence of Lily and Mel in my life, that I've also kind of become more open to these points of view and become, I think, a better person thanks to them. So that has been a nice little band side gift.
Do you think that was the catalyst, or was there something else going on that kind of like made you re-examine how you looked at the world?
I mean, I think it's a natural thing. You know, you get on your later 20s and you just stop being so, you know, immature and focus on yourself and start, you know, just maturing a little bit. I'm 29 now. I'm the baby of the group. So I've been maybe a little bit late to that trend. But I think definitely it has been prompted or facilitated by, you know, being involved with people that already have that maturity and that, you know, stability of mind. They both have known me in my earlier years, and they can attest to the change, I think, a little bit.
Also, when did you move to the U.S., and do you regret moving here just as it's falling into fascism?
Well, I actually just became an American citizen as of like 3 weeks ago. So,
you get the most out of that citizenship as you can before none of us have any.
Right. I moved here August of 2015 to start my master's.
Oh, God. Then 1 year later.
Oh God.
Yep.
Yep. So yeah, it's been what, 8 years almost. Yeah. And, yeah, I just became a citizen. I do not regret it. I don't know. I love being here. And, I think, yes, there's a lot of things to criticize, and by being here, I value the lifestyle in Spain and in Europe in general so much more. But I feel like also because of what I do and who I am and what I needed at the time that I moved in here, I know for a fact that I wouldn't have been able to do any of those things or fulfill any of those creative itches, in Spain. And I'm very, very grateful for the journey that I've had here and the people that I've met and the cultivation soup that I've fallen into. So yeah, I mean, yeah, there are things that suck, but I'm just happy to be here. So I'm grateful.
Do you mind if I ask, what was it that you were, I don't know about searching for, whatever verb you feel like using, that the US provided?
Meritocracy, productivity, just being able to have my work valued instead of just criticized or like, I don't know. Spain is a very specific, like it's such a chill country, and the lifestyle is awesome and everyone is chill, but at the same time, and specifically where I come from, which is more kind of like the older Spain, is like the deepest, more, I don't know. It's always like, oh, that person is like, good at something. They must have done something, wrong, or I don't know. Like there is kind of like a criticism to someone that is different from the rest or better, or, and, I always felt like there was kind of like a ceiling that I was continuously,
I get that.
hitting against. And yeah, I don't know. Especially, I moved here to study film scoring. So there is no industry of film industry in Spain and in Europe. So it was just kind of a necessity to move here.
There isn't a thriving, I was trying to think. I was in my head and I was just like, Almodovar. Wait, who else? I could not think of any other contemporary Spanish filmmakers. I'm like,
right. And they all come here to make it in the end. So yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So all the children of divorce, all relatively grew up, regardless of like, within a couple year span in the house, after the divorce. I'll start with Lily. Like, who got custody? How was the actual house structured, or how was your actual life structured?
Oh boy. Custody was difficult for a while. I eventually, my parents had joint custody when I was a little older, and we were pretty lucky in that my parents never lived super far away. I think my dad actually may have gotten that into the divorce contract. So I was pretty lucky that I got to go back and forth, and we would divide days. So every few days I was switching households. I'm a really good packer now. It's almost become like compulsive. Like I have this like actual resistance to putting things into a bag more than like an hour before I need to leave. Like I can't do it. So I think my worst one was I packed for a month. I was living in Italy for a month studying ancient Greek, and I packed for that trip in like the last 45 minutes before leaving for the airport.
That would drive me crazy.
That's insane.
I know. It's weird. It's this compulsion. And I think it's probably from like, I don't know, some sort of weird need to push the envelope after packing for years and years and years. Mm-hmm. So yeah.
Does that procrastination leak into the rest of your life, or is it just this?
No.
It's this one issue. It's this one thing, packing. Yeah.
No, I'm actually the opposite in the rest of my life. I'm like, okay, how soon can I start it? How on top of it can I be? How many extra gold stars can I get? And all of the above. And then in this one area, I'm a rock star. I don't know what it is.
I also love that it's not just a procrastination, that you've gotten very good at it and you're a very frugal packer. Like, I was amazed for our Europe tour. She just came in with a backpack, like the size, like not even a big backpack. I was like, what? What's
literally
going on here?
insane. Like a backpack and a small rolly suitcase. And we do have a piano that we borrow from Alba's partner, Noah Kelman. Definitely check him out. You may have seen him on social media teaching piano, but he has this piano de voyage, which breaks down into 4 pieces, right? It's an 88 key keyboard and it breaks down into 4 different pieces. And so Lily just had it in a small rolly bag and then she had a backpack. And I was like, well, I got to the gate and I was like, what the hell? Like, I have a huge suitcase with all my gear and it's like a mess. And I like had such a hard time packing all of it. So that's like the kind of crazy thing about it is like, she's a rebel, but she's an organized rebel.
Should just try packing in the last 15 minutes and see what you get.
Oh girl, I tried. It's a mess.
Now, that feels emotionally resonant to me. Yes, I get that. I don't get the exact thing, but I get the feel. I get an organized rebel. I get that. The constantly pushing against things in some way, but also wants the gold star from the teacher. I get that.
I just got to do it. I don't know what it is. It's like, I gotta push it each time. Like, actually the last time Melissa was taking care of our home, and I think I packed in the last 15 minutes? You were already on your call.
Yeah, it was insane. I was like, you haven't packed yet? You're leaving for the airport in 15 minutes. And she was fine.
It was fine. But we were going to Chicago, and same deal. I gotta push it. I just gotta push it.
Can I ask a question? I know you're the interviewer, but I'm curious about something. Are you also do you also have anxiety to leave the house, or is just the packing? Like, do you have any other reticence to leaving the house or traveling?
No, I love to travel. It's just I cannot put anything in a bag until the absolute last possible moment.
Interesting. Wow.
I could even put it on the bed.
You're all free to ask any questions you want. You don't have to just jump
Excuse me.
Yeah.
I have a question.
I get that. Melissa, what was the custody like for you? You said your mom. You said, sorry.
Well, no, it was more than that. My mom had us, and my dad pretty much right away moved away from DC to Kalamazoo, Michigan. And then that summer and summers thereafter, which was in my parents' divorce agreement, my dad had us for 5 weeks. But then as well, I have a brother, and my brother moved in with my dad when he was in 8th grade and I was in 7th. So then my mom had me and my dad had my brother, and I would go out to visit at Christmas and holidays, and my dad and I weren't particularly close when I was a kid, but we stopped talking, unfortunately, when I was in college. And then we do talk here and there, but really it's like every number of years. So, but when I was a kid, there was a structure for sure.
What's
my dad
Kalamazoo?
He's a cardiologist, but he moved I can't even count how many times to different jobs. He's very good at what he does, so he could get a job wherever he wanted to. But he's also moved to a bunch of random places. So many. So I got to live in cool places in the summers as a kid. My favorite was San Francisco. And then I wound up living there as well after college. Portland was also cool. Montana was not cool, but I didn't live there. Michigan was fine.
Wow, that's a lot of places. Jesus.
Now he lives in Colorado. The list is long.
Wait, so you were in DC because of cardiology, or was your mom in government or something?
Yeah, no, my mom's a 3rd grade teacher. My dad got his med school paid for by the Army, and so he was working at Walter Reed Hospital, which is where I was born. And then my mom just stayed there.
Was he in the Army?
No.
I guess the age, if he was in the first Gulf War or anything like that? No. I mean, he spent some time in Honduras.
And then they basically like stationed him at different army hospitals to kind of like pay back his time in school, from what I understand. So my parents were in Colorado, and then Texas, which is where my brother was born, and then DC, and I was born there. And then they stayed. My mom wasn't working when they were together, but my mom had like earlier gotten her master's in teaching, and then when they got separated, my mom went back to teach at a DC private school.
Okay, how about you, Alba?
I was and my brother were with my mom during the week and my dad during the weekends, and they also lived in the same city, so that was good. They both agreed on that, and they didn't want to separate my brother and I, so that worked out. And in terms of just like holidays and summers, we would just kind of split it, however evenly. It was pretty chill. They for the most part left it up to us to decide what we wanted to do, which sometimes maybe was more pressure than it could have been if they decided themselves. But that was also, it would give us flexibility depending on what we needed to do. Or in my case, for example, what would be more helpful. So my dad and my mom have completely different personalities. And so like sometimes, when I felt like I needed more regiment and structure and, that I was going through like an exam period or something, I would decide to go live with my dad. And then when I needed to like chill out a little bit or work on other things, I would spend more time at my mom's. So that was also good to be able to choose.
So it seems like all of you had somewhat structured childhoods. And I'm not asking because for any prurient reason or anything like that. One of the thing I've been really curious about this last like year or even more is just like, how do people form ambitions? How do people decide to make things when they could not? You could also have just said, I just want to watch TV and I don't feel like picking up a keyboard or a guitar or ukulele or whatever, right? Like, I'm very curious about like all the structure and like how much structure and how little structure. That's why I kind of like started like down this path. And I'm curious if you've ever thought about any of that stuff. If you've ever thought about like where your ambition comes from. Do you have ambition? Because I was just as a side note, I was talking to my friend Luke the other day, and my friend Luke is a great musician, but he didn't really feel like following that path. He likes making music, but he wanted to have a family. And so he put a lot of his energy into having a family. And he has great kids. I love his wife. We're great friends too. And that seems to be, and now like his kids are a little older, so he's starting to like make music again. But he's like, I don't have a void inside. Like, because I've been talking a lot about how I have a void, and that's why I pursue what I pursue on a professional level. And I'm curious if you guys have a void. I just assumed everyone I talked to on the show has one, but maybe you don't. Maybe there isn't a thing inside that you're trying to fill in or seal up or whatever. I don't know. I know that was a lot. I'm just curious if any of that resonates with you, or if you're just like, Andy, you need a second therapy session every week. One's not doing it.
I think we all could use a second therapy session a week. That would be luxurious.
That's interesting. I'm trying to think. For me, I think I'm realizing that my path into music didn't come, at least at the beginning, from needing to say something. Like I started playing violin when I was 5, and it was pretty much like very like, just kind of like classically structured from there. Like I did the conservatory from there until I was 18 for a long time, and that included obviously violin lessons, but also counterpoint and theory and composition. And I think I just found that I liked creating things more than I liked practicing for, X amount of hours and just to play something that someone else already plays perfectly in 1,000 recordings. That just made more sense to me organically. And then from then on, it was just kind of like a snowball of like, oh, I enjoy this and I might be good at it. And then so I keep doing it. And then I go into undergrad for classical composition. And that was a breaking point for me, where it's like I got disenchanted with the idea of creating, because suddenly I felt like there were another whole set of constraints that were putting on me, similarly to you have to play this passage perfectly in the violin. It was just like, oh, you cannot have a major chord because that's, old music, and now we have to make this specific type of music and it has to sound this way for it to be considered, elevated enough for us. And that was for me the point where it's like, okay, that this doesn't make sense anymore. So I made the leap to study film scoring when I was, I felt like I was more free to make the kind of music that I wanted to make. And then it just kind of made sense. I feel like maybe through ALMA and through songwriting, that has become more of a saying something with music. But for me, up until this point, it has never been about filling a void, or maybe it was, but not consciously. It has been more about just enjoying what I'm doing and just being naturally good at it. So I just keep doing it,
that seems like a healthy way of doing it. What about you, Lily?
Yeah, I don't know that it comes from a void so much. Also,
I'm feeling real lonely here right now.
I mean, it's so funny that you mentioned structure, because I would categorize my childhood as basically absolutely structureless. I mean, my parents were just like off in their own space, doing their own things. And I was the kid who like made my own meals and made my own lunch. And
you created your own structure.
Bingo. Yeah. So I would absolutely refuse if anyone wanted to help me with my homework. In fact, it drove me nuts if anyone even asked. And that kind of a thing. And I think, I often felt like more of a parent actually through my childhood. Which of course you grow up and then you realize why, which is you feel a little less crazy. But I think the music making comes from maybe a little bit more like Alba, more from a creative place that I do feel a need to express. And if that's related to a void, maybe like that feeling of like you have to express. But I do that. Part of what, actually, this is interesting. Part of what was so confusing to me as a person in my 20s was that I felt like I needed to do that in a whole bunch of ways. And it wasn't actually clear to me that music was the way for a long time. I broke up with music hardcore in college and did not come back to it until, 23, 24. And then tried to learn orchestration and get into a good master's program for film scoring.
That's how we met.
That's how we met. And that's what I do now. But for a long time, I was like, okay, no. The liberal arts is my thing. And I was a visual artist. I was a painter for years. And that was what I did. And I used to direct plays in school and choreograph and all of that weirdness. So it was like in a lot of different ways. It wasn't really clear to me what my form of self-expression was until I got much older.
Were you trying those things, or did those things fulfill you in the same way that playing music did?
Oh, they're super fulfilling.
Okay.
I was actually known as an artist in my classes more than a musician for a long time. Mainly probably because I'm so shy about music. I've come into it more now, but all through, even when Alba first met me, I was so shy about anything musical and had a really hard time performing. And being with ALMA has been really therapeutic in that sense. Everyone's very supportive, and when you go out there together, you're going out as a team. And that's really helped me kind of overcome that kind of anxiety around performing. But also about just having anyone hear anything that I have written, made, all of the above. And I never felt that way about art. I was much, much more confident about my visual art. So all through my younger years, I was actually an artist.
Do you know why that was? Like, what is it about music that you felt like, do you feel like you're more vulnerable in making music and that's why you want to be more secretive about it, or like less overt maybe is the better way to phrase it?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's a huge piece of it. I think it's more vulnerable. Your ideas are, maybe sometimes a little inchoate. Like you're not totally sure what it is you're going down the rabbit hole for. And I think with art, it was always pretty clear. And I also felt a little bit more confident about my abilities in visual art than I did with music. I mean, with music here, it's almost like a cliche, the child prodigies. And, I like Alba, kind of grew up in this classical, not so trained as Alba, but I was a classical pianist growing up, and so we'd go to symposiums every summer and hang out with all of the classical pianists, and everybody is so impressive and amazing, and it's hard to know where you are in an ecosystem where everybody's just absolutely incredible, and what is your voice in all of that. And I think composing was the way out of that. Yeah,
that's a lot to have pushed on you at a young age.
I mean, that's the music world in so many ways. I think, I don't know.
Maybe not.
It's a lot. I think for some people they feel the pressure of that, and it's a really negative thing. And for some people they feel the pressure and they just like push forward. For me, I was a shy kid, and so it was, I think I backpedaled a little bit more than I pushed forward, because it was so public. If it had been a less public thing, I probably would have felt a little bit more of that push.
So then what was it at 18 where you were like, where your identity totally changed? Or
I had a terrible piano teacher.
Oh.
Yeah, no, I went to college, and I was like, okay, well, I really love the piano. I guess I'll keep on playing my piano. And I had this piano teacher that I just hated. And it sucked all the joy out of it. I no longer liked it. And somewhat at that time, I was also falling in love with philosophy, and found my favorite professor of all time, Mitch Miller, who, I still walk around Central Park with and discuss the Greeks, and we have like a gay old time. Like, I adore this man. He's great. And so around that time I was falling in love with philosophy and the ancient Greeks, and I was really feeling like, well, okay, what is it about music? Like, if I don't even like my piano lessons, and this whole thing is to be able to perform, like, isn't the whole point like recitals at the end of the year? I hate performing. What is like, what's even in it for me? And my answer was probably nothing. So I gave it up. I ran the other way and went deep into history papers and philosophy papers.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So you gave up the piano and ran into Aristotle's metaphysics, or
Plato, to be specific, but yes.
Okay.
As one does.
Sure.
Yeah.
So, okay, maybe I can clarify the void thing before we get to Melissa, because I think that this is what I've been trying to figure out. I don't have a good answer because I'm still trying to understand what I mean by it. But there is the difference between making something and then making something and wanting other people to like it, and then wanting to build a career on it, or wanting to make things at a larger level. I think that requires a void. So you can make the same art object, whatever it is, with a void or without a void. And it is what happens. It's how you then interact with that art object on a social level. I think this is I think this might be the nuance I'm trying to articulate. I don't know if that makes any sense, but Melissa, what about you? So do you have a void, or am I the only void person on this?
It's a good question. I mean, I personally don't believe that any of us have voids.
Oh, interesting.
But it's taken me my entire life up until this point to get there, and to really like fully feel that each of us as people are inherently whole and worthy and there is no void. But I definitely felt that way when I was younger. And not that I'm like so wise in my 32 years. I have a lot to learn still, but like I actually, before pursuing music, was pursuing acting professionally. And I went to undergrad for acting. And even before that, in high school, I was acting all the time, was like the lead in all the plays. And I like had a big ego about it. And like, speaking of childhood, like in high school specifically, I can trace the line from high school back to middle school, back to elementary school of like when I auditioned for my first musical, which was Bye Bye Birdie. Mm-hmm. And I was very nervous to sing in front of anybody. So I asked my friend if she would sing with me, and we sang in harmony. And then I was cast in the ensemble, and I was like so upset. And I called my dad crying, and I was like, why? Why was I in the ensemble? And my mom was like, because you auditioned with somebody else. And then like, you know, fast forward to me being in high school and auditioning for BFA programs, which it's like, just like music, they're really competitive. It's like under 10% acceptance rates. And so you're like, I have to be the best, which is so funny too, because can we just remind ourselves that our educational systems are so effed up and expensive? So it's like so funny that we're like, oh my God, like I'm going to be the best. And like, I don't even know what money is, but like, I'm just going to take out student loans for like $50,000 a year. And now I'm like, that's somebody's that's like more than a lot of people's salaries. Like, great. But then I have so much to say about this, but like, then when I was in college, actually my senior year of college, I came to realize that my love of theater, which I still love very much, was actually like something that I had learned from being a very young kid whose parents got divorced, and I needed to like perform for everybody else and like make it good and make it okay. And it like directly actually translated from like me, you know, being a kid whose parents were not together and I had to like be the glue, like the happy glue of the family, to like being a performer. And that very much felt like a void. That felt like I'm never going to fill this. Like, this is just a result of like my own childhood shit that I have to work through. And then I was like,
yeah, classic
and I
void.
don't even,
classic
and I don't
void.
even, classic void. Hello. Hey, void. And I was like, I love and have so much respect for acting. But I started to realize like, I don't even want to be an actor. I love music so much. I want to be a musician. And actually, also to trace it back, I was sitting here and listening to Lily and Alba share their stories. And I started writing music like in response to the shit that was going down in my family. Like, I would write songs about like going to my grandmother's house for Thanksgiving and like feeling weird. Or I would like write songs about like my brother moving in with my dad and not knowing how to process that. And I also wrote a song about global warming, when we called it global warming, and like sang it for my school in 8th grade.
I want to hear these songs.
Oh, I don't know where they are. I don't know where they are. The hook for that one was like, why do these things have to happen? Which is like so general. It was like, why do these things have to happen? And I like I was so like into it, but then I was also like, oh my God, I can't do this. Like music is so hard. Like Lily said, there's a lot of like pressure around, and it wasn't even the pressure. It was just like, I don't want to practice. Like I'm good at acting. Let me just do that. And so it took me a bit, but now I feel that we create from space. We have to be able to like pause, and I think there is like this, if void is space or like blank canvas, then hell yeah. We are like, we constantly have to tap into that space as artists, and we have to like listen to what wants to be made. Because it's not actually it's not all us. We're like collaborating with everybody who we're working with, like in this band. I'm collaborating with Lily and Elba and others who make music with us. And also I'm collaborating with creativity itself. I just got so excited about that question.
Maybe the space is the flip side of the void. So, okay, let me throw this at you guys and see if this makes sense.
This is getting very Pink Floyd-y.
Again, this is all, I've not thought about this outside. I've not had a moment to think outside of this. So the void is, so the space is where you're creating, because you need, like, you can't just create from a void. You can't create from like a hole of need that was like created in childhood, right? That's not where the creating comes from. That's where maybe the want or the desire to create, but the actual like act, like you need things. You need access to your emotions. You need access to the world and friends and family, and you need to watch things and listen to things, all that stuff, right? That's where, and somewhere within that you are processing it through yourself, and then it comes out as some kind of transformed, not to get too Marxian, but like some transformed version of that and yourself into song or script or whatever. Okay. So that's the space. Then the void is what you do is what you do with the thing once you have it made. Is why do you want other people to interact? Or do you want because okay, so like in this in entertainment, I have seen people turn into monsters. And that's when the void, and some of these people never had spaces in the first place. They were very bad at creating, but they had such a big void and they had enough charisma that they could climb the ladder in certain cases. And those people were just these deep voids, and nothing ever will ever fill it up. So I'm pretending like there's a black hole in front of me, and I'm dropping things into the black hole.
I see it. I saw Halloween candy though.
Honestly, in my mind, it was just shapes. So it's whatever you feel like. It's whatever popped into your brains. So the void. Okay, sorry. This is I'm just again articulating this now. So if you have just the space, you create stuff and maybe you share it with your friends or whatever. You don't care what happens. You don't care if it does anything or not. And then some people just have the void and they just like vampirically try to achieve some fame, let's just say, as shorthand. Mm-hmm. And then I think us, at least talking to you, you don't seem like either, right? Because you make albums and you put them out into the world and you tour, and I'm sure you want more people to listen to the things you make, right? So there's some measure where like those two, the space and the void, are.
So you're talking more about the recognition rather than the creativity. Like the void comes from wanting people to recognize that what you made with that creativity was good, and therefore giving it power. Maybe
not recognition as much as like, because I was thinking about this when I was talking to Luke, and I was thinking, I'm like, I make stuff. It's not just like, yes, I want to be able to make money to survive and pay for vet bills for our animals and all those kinds of things, right? and I want some recognition. The void is there in me, but also like it's connection. I'm looking to make things that will resonate with other people to connect with them on that level. So it's not just, there is like, I can't deny that there isn't some narcissistic kind of angle to it, but it's not just that, right? I think those are the people that are just voids.
Right.
And does this make any sense?
Yeah, no, it does.
Yeah.
It does. And I would say, what I'm reflecting on is before we put our album out, there felt like, or you could say at least that there felt like there was more of a void within our work for me, and more of a void within our dynamic as a band for me.
Yeah.
Like, I think I'll just be vulnerable for a second and say, like, my big journey within this band has been this journey of like, am I good enough to be in this band, to be a musician, and like to bring my creative ideas, and do I have enough musical knowledge and skill and yada, 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 like all this stuff around. Yeah, enough. And like, that is directly related to their feeling like there's a void. And then also in terms of putting stuff out into the world, like just that moment before, or those years before when you're creating and there's like nothing to put out yet, it feels very much like this yearning of like, I just want so badly to share this, but it's not ready. And to me, that doesn't necessarily feel like void, but it feels like complete unknown. So I guess, that you could say that that's void. But now that we've put stuff out, it feels, I don't know, like we're just getting that reflected back to us.
Yeah, I think something for me that I think is very unique in this band, and is something that I treasure a lot, is the fact that we have chosen, let me rephrase that, not all of our eggs are in this basket. Like, we have chosen to share some of our creativity and some of our life with the band, and in doing so, we are stretching our skills, we're learning new things, we're collaborating, we're learning things about each other, and also music. And we're, getting to express ourselves in a different way. But that this is not our only creative outlet, and therefore is not the only thing filling the void. And so I think that, at least for me, within the band, it just makes it all okay, because with putting our album out, for example, I never felt any pressure of like, this has to be good and it has to go to these places and have this many listens and we have to get booked by this. I mean, this is something that we want to do, of course, and we love our music and we're so proud of it and we want to, people to hear it. But it has never been about self-worth, like how many listens our album has out there doesn't reflect on, and again, this is just talking about myself, but it doesn't reflect on how I think about my skills or my creativity, because I know I have this other, world of creation that I can draw from.
Yeah. I think there's also, if you really like the thing that you've made, it doesn't matter. Like, you want other people to hear it, but if they don't, you're like, no, I still made this thing that I think is great. Like, I didn't compromise on it. I just made the thing I wanted to make, and it's an expression of something that's inside me. And it would be nice if it connected with other people or whatever. But if it did, I have things I've made that like are very populist, and I have things I've made that, a couple hundred people have heard or seen or whatever. And it's a mix. I'm proud of those things as much as I'm proud of something that's more populist, as long as that populist thing happened to not be a compromise with me. And I don't even mean like, because I have to write scripts, and so I have like a producer and I have like a studio, or I have like people like giving me notes and stuff. As long as the notes are like on the same page, I don't mind taking them. So I don't even mean just like collaborating with other people, but I just mean like, if I'm not like cutting something off, does that make sense, to make something?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
I think there's a sense that like it's not done until it goes out into the world. That's something I've always felt. As long as it lives in your own ecosystem, it's not it's not really done yet. And there's sort of it's putting it out into the world that puts a period on the sentence. And, of course, work still develops. And as these two will tell you, I am so guilty of constantly changing the chord progressions to songs that should have been done years ago. But I'm always trying to rearrange them and play them differently. So not to say that music doesn't develop. But I do think that there is this sense of you need the social aspect in order to say that something is done, to let go.
Yeah, for sure. I know something when I put something out, whatever it is. When I send a script off, when I put a podcast out, whatever, something changes in me where I suddenly am like seeing it through the eyes of other people, and that change kind of like puts that period on it.
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. Because, it's funny, I was trying to think like what's different, because, so many, as a film composer, so many of the films that I work on, I never see again. And I never see how they're received. I never see like any of it. It's like it goes off into the ether and it has its own life. And maybe I hear about it, maybe if I'm friends with the director or producer or something on Instagram, but that's a huge if. And then sometimes, it goes off and it does something cool, like be on Netflix, and I'll hear from people later. But it's very, very uneven, and I have never given it I've never had any sense of worth from that, or like, I don't know, maybe because it is so uneven, and if you did, you would be in really, really hot water very quickly. But But with songwriting and the band, it does feel a little different. It's a little bit more, I think we are looking for a little bit more feedback. And I think in some ways it's because there's a performative aspect of it, maybe.
Yeah. Sorry, I was just going to comment on this because this happens to me as well with films. And I think there's also a component of it that is the fact that your music is just part of something bigger. So like, it's not just what, obviously you're creating that, but you're creating this to accompany something that is a different type of creation, and it all goes kind of together in this collaboration. And obviously, soundtracks can be so amazingly complex and work so well with the film, but still, to me as a creator, that feels more like I'm adding to something rather than I'm creating something from scratch. And that's something that I've only felt with either the band or with, like composing classical music for ensembles. Is like the only thing that people are hearing and experiencing as a creative output is what I created from scratch. There's nothing else going on. And that's a different perspective for me. I don't know if that affects what you're talking about.
Yeah, no, I think that is a huge piece of it. And cause you're right. When you do a film score, like you're here to serve. Like you can't have an ego in film scoring, because if you do, it's going to get knocked around constantly, because you're taking notes here, you're changing this, you're doing things that you might not even feel are artistically sound, but it's because the storyteller, the producers, the director, whoever it is, has this idea that they're trying to get across. And the thing is, if you think that you understand their vision better than they do, and they are the creators, you kind of have another thing coming. Like you might have a different artistic sense, and you might have better taste in some kind of, realm. Like we all think we have great taste, but maybe Sundance would agree with you instead of the creator that you're working with. But really it doesn't matter at the end of the day. You're a teammate in that regard. And in that way, I do think that there is a relationship with, art that we create in the band where, yeah, we all want to feel like super proud and perfect of every single note and every single moment in the songs that we put out. But at the end of the day, we're on a team. Mm-hmm. And there is sort of this collaborative aspect that is bigger than each individual voice also in that regard. And I think that also helps you kind of let go of the void voice, where, it's a team effort. And so what it's reflecting on is the team and not your own, whatever that niggling voice is that's trying to tell you how much you matter.
Well, I'm older than all of you, but I still have not been able to vanquish that yet. But fingers crossed.
I'm not sure any of us have either.
No, not at all.
No.
You know.
I'm trying. Look, it's a process. We'll see. I've got, 30 years, 40 years maybe, if I'm lucky. So.
Yeah. But, back to, I think, Andy, you actually had a good point, which is that it's also about connection. That I think that's one piece of this puzzle, this pie, that I don't feel as strongly in the film scoring world, which is that we perform. And because we perform, we talk to our audience afterwards, or we talk to other musicians. And there is nothing like the feeling of when someone comes up and tells you that a song really touched them, or they felt like there was some kind of kinship with that piece of art that you performed for them. And I think that's a really special thing about being an artist. Sometimes you get it from the film world, but more often than not, nobody's listening to film music, but with a band, they're there to see a band, to see live music, and they listen to it, more intentionally. And I think that is a really special thing that we get to do, to connect to someone. And I guess where I'm going with this is that it's not only about their connection to you, which is feeding your ego, but I think there's also a sense that is, I always feel a little breath of relief when I hear that someone else has a similar story to me.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a sense that I'm not alone in the world either.
Yep.
That this person in the audience that I don't know has gone through something similar, feels it in a way that I do, and that we share this now. And I think that's a really beautiful thing.
Yep.
That actually seems like a nice place to end on that note before I drag us back into my own neuroses. Thanks for being on the show. This was great.
Thank you for having us. This was so much fun and such a different approach. I feel like it did feel like a therapy session. So thank you for that.
Yeah. Thursday night therapy with Andy.
Yeah, we
That's
were
good.
actually
Yeah.
joking. Thursday therapy. Yeah.
Yeah, just cleanse it, and then you got the weekend ahead of you, and you don't have to worry about whatever anxieties. Yeah, see, I'm not smart. I have my therapy on Mondays, and so then it's just like
you gotta do Thursday. Yeah.
yeah.
Therapy Thursday.
Therapy
All right,
Thursday, man.
I'm gonna write my therapist when we're done with this and change. But yeah, thanks again for being on.
Thank you so much for a beautiful conversation. This was actually thought-provoking and a beautiful place to swim in for a little bit. Thank you.
And we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye, oh bye, oh bye, oh bye.